Hello. Today on What's That About, we're excited to talk to Jivan Sobrinho-Wheeler, Cambridge City Council member who just last year was elected for his second term. And as part of our preview episode on the 2024 election, we asked Mr. Sobrinho-Wheeler to come on to discuss his support of question one on the Massachusetts ballot this year. Thanks for coming on our show, Jivan.
Thanks for having me.
And did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah, you pronounced it perfect. Yeah, Rhymes with Steven.
Okay, great. Yeah, so my first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is your background in Cambridge and what drove you to run for city council?
Totally. Yeah, I just started my second term on the city council earlier this year. I am a renter in Cambridge. Housing costs are a big piece for me. Two-thirds of the city are renters. We had hardly any on the city council before I started. So I've made that a big focus, creating more affordable housing, strengthening tenant protections, working on more initiatives like a Cambridge Community Land Trust, trying to see if we can do social housing in the city have been big focuses. Transportation issues are also one I've worked on a lot, making safer streets, trying to improve public transit, as well as sort of the issues around good governance. We're doing our first charter review in Cambridge in 80 years. That's something I'm really excited about and have worked on. Trying to see if we can do a jobs linkage program in the city. So worked on a few different issues during my time on the council.
Yeah. Um, where does the charter review stand? I remember that you had a lot to do with that in your first term, right?
Yeah. One of the pieces we did in my first term was uh, put three questions on the ballot for residents, and one of those was asking voters if they wanted Cambridge to do regular charter reviews every 10 years, which the city has not done anything with the charter since the 1940s. That question passed overwhelmingly, and so the city appointed a charter review committee. They met for a year, sent recommendations to the council. Those recommendations are now before us. We've had a few meetings on it, and I think the next step is a committee of the whole council getting appointed to go through those recommendations and see if there's any others we want to put before the voters. Would hopefully be on the ballot in fall 2025.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't been following it quite as much. I know that the process was grinding on. So the council is going to be taking up the recommendations you said in the coming months.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully have some meetings on that this fall and next spring. And then any changes the council approved would have to go to the legislature and the attorney general just for a sign off. And then they would go to the ballot for voters who would have the ultimate decision on whether there's any changes to the charter.
Cool. I'm eager to hear how that comes out and follow that process.
Same.
Um, as I said, I have all kinds of things I'd like to ask you, but for the election preview episode, I need to focus on the ballot questions. And I saw on social media that you were campaigning with the state auditor, Diana DiZoglio, in support of question one. So I thought you would be the perfect Canterbury in to talk about this from a progressive point of view. Um, can you explain why you support this measure? And just for those who haven't read it yet, a yes vote on question one would specifically give the state auditor authority to audit the state legislatures. And currently, Beacon Hill claims they're exempt from an audit.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So this would allow the state auditor's office to audit the state legislature. It is, I think, the shortest question on the ballot. I just got my mail-in ballot the other day and filled it out, and there are five ballot questions. This one is question one is maybe 2 lines. Should the auditor be allowed to audit the state legislature? And to me, it's pretty straightforward. The auditor can already audit the judicial branch and the executive branch. There are three branches of government. They should also be able to audit the legislative branch. Massachusetts is one of the only states where the legislature is exempt from the open meeting law. And so, everything from legislature expenditures to meetings to other communications are a lot harder to understand. And our legislature, has not taken action on things, including a climate bill this past year. There's a number of pieces, that seem like they're going to move forward and then end up getting halted, and it's hard to really figure out why. I think having the auditor have the power to do some investigations on the legislature would shine a little more light on that. The auditor doesn't have the legal authority to change things on the legislature. So the idea of separation of powers or some conflict or legal drama is not something I think is particularly concerning here. It's all about just trying to provide a little more transparency to the legislative branch.
Mm. So yeah, I had a follow up that the legislature is saying that in the Constitution, there's the separation of powers says that they are exempt for any kind of outside interference. So, and how you respond? Can you repeat how you respond to that?
Yeah, I'd say yeah, I don't think that the claim of interference holds up here because it isn't asking the legislature to actually change anything. It's not saying they can't spend money on things, they have to do processes is a different way. It's literally just an audit, looking at what they do now, opening up the books, trying to report on what's happening. Which is the role of an auditor's office is to understand public bodies and provide some accountability so that if the attorney general wanted to take action, if voters wanted to take action on it, if the executive branch wanted to work differently, they couldn't. They could do that based on this information. But what the auditor's office would be doing is just trying to provide more information to the public and to those bodies.
Mhm. Um, and on our show, we're not impartial. We've covered extensively that the state legislature is one of the most opaque and undemocratic in the country, and this year it was historically ineffective, passing fewer bills than ever, despite being a single party, ostensibly liberal state. Um, can you think of why do you think this an audit or the opportunity to audit or the audit process could help improve the effectiveness of the legislature? Um, Certainly, it could provide transparency, but do you have any take on that?
Yeah, I think a big piece of it is helping the public and other government agencies maybe answer the why question. We know things don't move in the legislature sometimes. We get some of the story sometimes at a committee meeting, or maybe a legislature goes and talks to the press. But there are a lot of times where things get halted, and it's not really clear why. Committee votes aren't public. There's a lot of sort of behind the scenes hammering out of pieces and the story of why a bill died, why it got changed, why this provision that seemed like it was going to get implemented didn't. Real estate transfer fee is one the Cambridge City Council has been in support of year after year. Plenty of reps would be just a 2% transfer fee that cities could implement if we wanted on $1 million property transfers that would raise millions of dollars for affordable housing. It would be an opt-in, so it wouldn't be any change. Would just give municipalities the option to do it. Comes up again and again and again at the state legislature. It seemed like it was going to pass this year. The governor was in support of it, and then at the last minute, it didn't move forward, and it's not really clear why. Climate bill is a similar case where there was so much work, so much support on this, and at the end of the session, it just sort of petered out, and it's really unclear sort of reasoning behind that. So I think being able to shed a little bit more light on that, open up some of the decision-making processes, figure out, how decisions get made and how the budget can implement those, right? I think the legislature is a more top-down body than some others we have in the state, where folks in power are able to wield that in particular ways, and being able to figure out, how the budget powers, how the sort of the formal powers influence leads to bills moving forward or not moving forward, I think would be really helpful by an audit.
Hmm. Well, thanks. I think I think we've covered that pretty well in your position. Do you want to talk about any of the other questions on the ballot? So say we'll start with number two, elimination of the MCAS as a graduation requirement. Do you have any feelings about that one?
Yeah. Again, supportive of it. The ballot question would eliminate the standardized test MCAS as a graduation requirement. It would not eliminate MCAS entirely. Folks, schools could still administer it. They could still, use those results to see how students are performing, to compare to other schools. Would not eliminate the test, would only eliminate it as a graduation requirement for students. So Massachusetts is only one of 8 states right now that have it as a graduation requirement. Some of those other 8 states are Florida, Texas, Louisiana, not states we generally aspire to in terms of our educational performance. And studies show standardized testing like this adds stress to teachers, adds stress to students, disproportionately as a challenge for students learning English as a first language, students with disabilities, low-income students. And when you put it as a graduation requirement, it's only more so. Argument on the other side for this is that standardized testing improves accountability for it. But what we haven't seen in Massachusetts are states that are performing poorly. We don't see superintendents get fired as a result. We don't see major shakeups that way. The only accountability is for the students who are being let down, that aren't able to get a diploma. And in 2024, if you don't have a high school diploma, it's really tough to get a job, to really make a living for your family, to get any other education. If the student is getting the grades to be able to graduate, if their school district says we think this student is doing well, it's a high school diploma. This is a really basic prerequisite, and whether that student is a good test taker or not shouldn't be the thing holding them back. And so a yes vote on that seems pretty clear to me.
Okay. What about the other ones? Any of the 3, 4, or 5 you feel like you want to address?
Yeah, happy to talk about any of them. I think the
Okay.
question 4 is on
Mushroom legalization, yeah.
yeah, psychedelics legalization. It's a sort of and this would be different than cannabis, right? This would not just allow psychedelics to be sold to anyone. This would be a regulated process where you could go in and do psychedelic therapy in a supervised setting. And I think there's more and more research over the years that shows that it's useful for populations that have experienced PTSD, that have other challenges. There are settings where it's being used already. There's been a lot of studies, including in the Boston area, from folks who are researching this and have found benefits from this. So I think it is a piece to allow a regulation of that process, and hope we can move forward with that one as well.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer. And I assume you are fully in support of number 3, the unionization of rideshare, the opportunity for rideshare workers to unionize. What about is that I don't want to put words in your
Yep,
mouth.
no, that's right. Yep.
Seems like, yeah. What about number 5, bringing the wage for tipped workers in line with minimum wage over time?
Yeah, I'm supportive of that one as well. I think it is the tip minimum wage, like a lot of things in the United States, are a legacy of slavery. We had a minimum wage, but then excluded certain populations from it. And one of those were tipped workers, who are disproportionately people of color, also women. And so you have this situation where the tip minimum wage is less than $7 in Massachusetts right now, which just is not enough to get by. The very word tip it's an acronym that we don't think of it anymore, but it comes from an acronym for to ensure promptness. It was supposed to be something that was a bonus, that you got paid a wage and then you were getting a bonus for good service. We've somehow over the years in the US taken that as, okay, no, actually it's going to be your base wage, and it's going to be something that is completely up to discretion of what of if somebody is going to be able to make ends meet. That is not how tips were originally supposed to be figured. They were supposed to be something on top of the regular service, and it's not like the minimum wage is something that is comfortable folks are going to live on by itself. $15 in a place like Massachusetts is not a wage to begin with. There's a lot of research, both folks' personal experiences and research that show the tip system can lead to harassment and sexual harassment, where customers can demand things from patrons in exchange for tips. It's not a good environment that way. yeah, could go on this, but I think it is a piece to say, we should have one standard minimum wage. It's the whole sort of clear in the name of the idea of a minimum wage. It's supposed to be the minimum, and tips were supposed to be a piece on top of that. And so, eliminating the tip minimum wage, having one standard wage across the state is a thing. I think 8 or 9 states already do. There are still restaurants in the states. It's still an experience. And the argument I heard about this the other day that I thought was helpful as well. Of an argument against this is that if it changes, folks aren't gonna tip in those states. They're gonna adjust it. But when I go to another state that doesn't have a tip minimum wage, I don't think about what the tip minimum wage is in that state. You just see you tip the same. I tip the same in Massachusetts as I do in California, as I do in New Hampshire, as I do in Maine, because I'm used to tipping a certain way. And so that the idea that this would suddenly destroy tips in the state or impact workers negatively that way is something I don't think makes a ton of sense. And having a one standard minimum wage, I think, is something that makes a lot of sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm a little conflicted on that just because I guess restaurant and bar owners, think they can keep their prices lower without this measure, and that they'll have to raise prices. And I think right now we're paying that price anyway. It's just hidden a little more because they don't have to pay their workers minimum wage. I don't know.
So it's one of
I
those.
think in principle it's another no brainer, but also don't want to see business go out of business.
Yeah, and I think it's the piece of how we support restaurants, how we provide more benefits for workers, right? It's like why I'm supporting Medicare for all, so that
Hmm.
small businesses don't have to, figure out that healthcare cost and do the prices that way. It's just something we should be provide for all people and not have every business have to figure it out for their own. It is a piece where there are other things we could do that would be helpful. I just think the idea of we need to give workers this really sub minimum wage in order to have our current system of restaurants is sort of not the way to address that problem. It's by providing support for workers and for small businesses on things like healthcare, on things like retirement plans, sort of taking some of that other burden on the table rather than trying to race to the bottom on some of these other issues. But yeah, it's one of the small how to run a small businesses. There are definitely challenges there.
Hmm. Well, thanks for that. Is there anything else going on in the council you want to draw attention to right now? I know there was recently there was talk about 6 stories as of right, or in the zoning. There's that. There's the Memorial Drive cycling, but the guy who was killed by a driver. There, either of those you want to touch on or focus on, or
Yeah, I could talk about both briefly. Yeah, we've had some discussions on the council about Memorial Drive recently. Glad that DCR is making improvements to the BU Rotary after the recent fatal crash. I think it all comes down to me is that it shouldn't take someone getting killed for improvements to be made. We had this situation where someone was killed and DCR rushed to make improvements after that. It just shouldn't take that to make improvements. And I can see a situation down the line. We have other parts of Memorial Drive that are as unsafe. There could be a person killed in one of those parts. We could be in another situation where DCR is then pushing to make changes that they didn't make now. I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want to have to tell a family, we should have made these changes earlier, but we didn't. And so, I've been pushing to try to see how we expand shared use paths across DCR, look at some of the places on Memorial Drive that aren't scheduled to get those improvements yet, and see how we improve those, and sort of the work there. And then the multifamily housing proposal, we've been talking about it for a few months on the council. We now have zoning language before us. It's going to go to the ordinance committee soon to sort of dive into the details. I think it is figuring out how we end single family only zoning in Cambridge, move away from the legacy of exclusionary zoning, create more housing and inclusionary units, making sure that that is part of it. And we, think the current proposal before us would create like something like 1,000 more affordable units than we have now. Currently, we have the affordable housing overlay, but all other developments in that are mostly market rate units, are a lot of just larger McMansion style housing instead of more affordable types of housing, and trying to figure out how we allow that sort of greater diversity, both capitally affordable and lowercase a affordable housing throughout the city.
Do you think that's what are your feelings about the progress there? Do you think it's going in the right direction? I mean, I know everything's a fight. It seems like a 5-4 fight now in the council, but how it moved forward after some pausing. Like what is there more? What more would you like to see? I guess I don't have a good question here.
Yeah. No, I think the piece I was to say, like, there are a lot of things in Cambridge where there is agreement at the high level on, and like how we create more housing, I think is one of them. I think the question is how you do it. What's the specifics of the proposal look like? And that's where folks on the council end up disagreeing or having some nuance at. And I think that's where we're at now is what is the specifics of this proposal going to look like? When is it going to pass? How much housing is it going to create, and in what neighborhoods, right? Is this would be citywide? Where would this actually be the most impactful? How much deed restricted affordable housing would create? Those are some of the questions I think the council is sifting through now.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I mean, I can't, let's, if I'd love for you to come back and be our guest in a future episode. Maybe we can talk more about some of these issues we're touching on now.
This was great. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for reaching out and covering the ballot questions. And yeah, always a lot going on in the city. So definitely more to talk about.
Great. Well, thank you, Jivan Sobrinho-Wheeler, for coming on and being our guest. And yeah, have a good weekend.
Thanks. Thank you too, Pete. Have a good weekend.
So long.
Bye.